The people spoke. The plaintiff just doesn't want to listen. They've spent this entire trial trying to sell you this story. They're trying to sell you this grand plan that Mayor Heisman was supposedly in on. This idea that rather than running a campaign, while she was in the middle of running her own campaign, she spent all this time in secret backdoor meetings, secret memos, secret flyers, so that she could suppress voters and win this race. They told you that she conspired, that she targeted these people, and that changed the outcome. Don't fall for their story, because all three of those things, they're not true. They tried to show you a timeline. They think that putting these things together on one line will make it seem like it must all be connected. But the fact of the matter is, we're in a court of law, and you must look at evidence. You must look unbiasedly at everything you've seen, the facts, and determine if this actually makes sense. And let's walk through some of the things that they tried to prove. They tried to prove that Mayor Heisman conspired. And who said this? So that was Ziegler. Mr. Ziegler talked about this meeting between Heisman and French. Mr. Ziegler also talked about a campaign memo. Mr. Ziegler seemed to tie this all together. And it's very convenient that he does that. It's very convenient that he's the only person who happened to be there that night. The only one who can confirm this story. And he's actually the only one who saw this memo. Because you heard from their own witness. He looked on every computer for any signs of this. It's not there. You heard that every single senior staff member should have seen this. Because it says the senior staff, and he said, yes, every single member would have seen this. You heard from Mr. Michael, a senior staff member. He never saw this. It's just convenient that the man who was fired, the man who was livid for not getting the job he was promised, just happens to come in court today and have all these facts that just seem to tie this memo together. They just happen to tie this meeting together. All of these things, they didn't happen. Because you have to look at facts and decide whether or not anyone can corroborate this, and their own witness said he didn't. Every other thing they've talked about today, these flyers, this meeting with Casey French, or even Mayor Heisman's association with Casey French, how does that prove that there was some sort of conspiracy? All they've proven to you is that Mayor Heisman, working in her capacity as a public defender, where she doesn't get to choose who she defends, where she does justice, defended a man 10 years ago. And now they want you to believe that that 10-year dead connection proves a conspiracy. Don't fall for their story. The people spoke, and they don't want to listen. And they don't want you to listen to the facts either. They talked about this burner phone. And right here, they have it written that French activates the burner phone. But remember what you heard today from the person who looked at the phone. On cross-examination, he specifically said, I do not know who owned that phone. I do not know who purchased that phone. I do not know who used that phone. I do not know if that person had any connection whatsoever to the mayor. Don't fall for their story. So now, all they have left is this contact. They're trying to tell you that, well, this same phone number was saved in the mayor's phone, so that alone should prove this big conspiracy. You heard that Mayor Heisman could give her phone to anyone. Anyone could have typed that in. They couldn't tell you who did. They couldn't tell you that Mayor Heisman actually knew that phone number was in there, actually meant to put that phone number in there. They failed to prove that there is any sort of conspiracy here. So then the second thing they tried to tell you was targeting. They talked for a long time about how these lower-income residents were targeted. It was specifically them who were hit. But once again, they just don't want to listen to facts, because their own witness said, I don't know who these text messages were sent to. I don't know who these calls were sent to. I don't know if every single one was a Heisman supporter. Does that sound like targeting? If they're just sending them to anyone and they can't tell you who they actually targeted. They talked about this flyer. I want a number. I want a number for how many people actually saw this flyer. They're not going to give it to you. All we heard was Amari White saw this flyer, and Ms. Midori saw one flyer on a building. They want to make it seem like there were thousands of these, that every single voter got them. Every single voter was told this false information. There are no facts to support that. So far we know of Amari White as the one and only voter who actually received this, and she still voted. There is no targeting. They're just trying to sell you their story. So finally, the bigger point is whether this actually changed the outcome. And there was a long discussion about that. And there was a lot of confusion on both sides. But they conveniently didn't talk about all the things that led up to March, led up to that election. Because they tried to bring in this audit and they tried to tell you, well, this audit said that, the election would have changed. This audit said that Ginger would have won. But remember what the actual expert who came here to testify told you. That audit used February numbers. It completely ignores everything that happened between February and March. And you heard that it was no fraud that caused this outcome of the election. It was Ginger herself. You heard she makes statements days before the election saying how residents of District 12 just want handouts. They should pull themselves up by the bootstraps like I did. You heard that she didn't have the rallies she used to. She didn't have the support she used to. Volunteers weren't out like they used to be. And it's not surprising that her support drops 8.1%. And they want you to ignore this because they want you to think of that audit that doesn't have this drop, that audit that leaves out everything that happened at the end of that election because they don't want to listen to that. Don't fall for it. When you look at everything, it's clear. Ginger's campaign was going down. She wasn't going to win this race, and Mr. Michael told you exactly why. The fact of the matter is, with the percentage of people who supported Ginger, with the actual accurate March numbers, there's a statistically impossible. There's no way she could have come here and won this race. She would have needed more people to turn out than Mr. Michael has ever seen turn out in an election. They would literally need to be off the charts, the number of people showing up. They didn't show that there was any sort of conspiracy. They didn't show that anyone was targeted by this, and they didn't show that the outcome changed. Because on all three counts, they just don't want to listen. But members of the jury, all 20,000 residents of Midlands, they spoke. All of them in districts 1 through 12 came out on March 17th. They were helped by people working elections. Their questions were answered. The lines were kept open so that they could vote. And they did. And when they voted, they chose Max Heisman. And they don't want to listen to that because they want the 12 of you, the 12 members of this jury in a different district, in a different town, to come and change all that. Because Ginger lost this race. You saw how she lost it. You saw how it's impossible for her to have won it. And this is their last chance. Don't silence the people of Truman. Don't silence the voters. Listen to them. Find Max Heisman not liable.